Here we go with reflections on week 2 of the Bible, or the Lent Encounter. So last week, week 1, was all about Genesis, about our origins, about the awesome God that had made the world and the intricate and the delicate way in which humanity had been created by him. And we were challenged to take pictures of that awesome beauty. And here's one of the pictures of one of the challenges last week that Anna Webster sent in for me. We asked to bake a cake, and this is a savoury cake because her husband isn't a sweet tooth. Thank you for the tuna fish cakes, Anna. And if anybody else has pictures as we go through this Lent Encounter, please send them in and I'll show them on these videos. But after last week, we now move on to the Exodus in the Bible. And so we've been reflecting on the sense of freedom. The people of Israel had willingly gone to Egypt, and you'll all know the story of Joseph, because they were hungry and they needed food. But hundreds of years later, they then found that they were actually enslaved in the country that they'd willingly gone to. And it was up to Moses. And if you've seen The Prince of Egypt, and I think perhaps Charlton Heston might have been in an old movie about this, he led the people through the Red Sea to freedom. Did he really lead them to freedom? If you know the story, they wandered about in the wilderness for 40 years. The Bible Society, in these reflections, has thought a lot about what they do for and their work with prisoners in this week, for obvious reasons. And it struck me because I did a 3-month placement in a prison as part of my training, that actually freedom is a bit more complicated than we might think. It's not necessarily about freedom to choose whatever we want to do, or freedom from responsibility. Because talking to the men in the prison, I found that quite often the fact that they were physically not free, they were very much living in a strict, regimented routine, and they couldn't come and go as they pleased within the building, never mind getting out of the prison compound. But actually for them, that was a sort of freedom, because it was freeing them from the pressures that they faced outside the jail. Pressures perhaps of substance abuse or alcohol abuse, and they were able to get clean in the jail and live normal days with clear heads. Perhaps freedom from gang pressure, perhaps freedom from abuse, maybe that they had been a victim of from childhood. And so actually, our sense of freedom and their sense of freedom were completely different. I've also been thinking a lot over the last few days about the children's book by the author Eric Carle, The Hungry Caterpillar. You may well know it. And the hungry caterpillar gets bigger and bigger as over a week he continually eats his way through different fruit and veg. And then at the end of the week, he uses all that energy and all that food to build a cocoon around himself in which he becomes trapped. And for the last 12 months, perhaps you might feel that you've been trapped in some sort of cocoon. Maybe like me, you've put weight on because, like the caterpillar, you've been eating through things and not been able to take part in your normal exercise. But more than that, you might have been restricted in terms of holidays that you could have gone on, family that you could have seen in different parts of the country. You might even have been restricted in the way that you can carry out your work, or not been able to carry out your work at all. So we've all been in some sort of cocoon, but at the same time, perhaps that's given us the opportunity to think about things, to think about the freedoms that we normally have, and perhaps once this is all over and we slowly start to come out of lockdown, where that will take us. We've begun to think about what's really important, what matters, caring about other people, making sure that people who don't have what we have or struggle to get out are looked after. Being friendly and saying hello to folk that we meet in the street, being kind to our neighbours. And maybe, just maybe, once the restrictions are lifted, we might be a bit like the caterpillar who, when the cocoon breaks open, actually finds that now he's a butterfly. We perhaps have an opportunity to follow a different kind of lifestyle as things open up, kinder and maybe more friendly with people. That sounds a bit like God's rules to me. I don't know what you think about freedom. We'll see where we go next week.